What's up, everybody? Let's do a quick review of the ZS80 Panasonic. This is a small consumer, I guess, super zoom camera. It's very few of these left. This was made in 2018, 19-ish time frame. There's only probably 4 or 5 of these kind of cameras types left. You know, Canon has their version, Sony has their version, Nikon discontinued the A1000, which was that version. So yeah, there's 3 really left, but I wanted to go over, you know, the details of this. So alongside the Sony camera, I took this for hiking in the Black Hills, probably put in about 30 miles up there, and paralleled these cameras as best I could in wildlife photography to kind of get a rough estimate for the performance in that. So yeah, before we get into, I guess, the image quality and what, you know, first impressions, this isn't a super comprehensive video on the capabilities of this. Just if you're looking for, I'll kind of help sum up this real quick. If you're looking for something that's comparable to the Canon and you can get your hands on one of these cameras or the Sony, it's right in the same ballpark roughly. You're not going to be missing out on a whole lot. There's a lot of small nuances which I'm going to do, you know, comparison between these 3 cameras, actually the 4 cameras, the A1000, Nikon 2, kind of give you a summary of the strengths of each camera system and kind of go down a chart and give that to you, break that out. But let's get into this. First, tech specs. This is 10.5 ounces. It's roughly a little less than the A1000 in comparison size-wise. It's a little heavier than the Canon and much heavier than the little Sony. 24 to 720 millimeters, 3.5 to 6.4 aperture, pretty standard for these cameras. It has a 2 times digital zoom, 2 and 4 times digital zoom. You can usually, the 2 times is pretty good. We'll show you some video and some images on that. Along with that, it's got a pretty chunky battery, kind of much more than obviously the Sony. It's got this little guy here. It's pretty chunky and takes a regular SD card. Not a problem there. So the EVF, it has a built-in EVF where the Canon does not, and the Sony has a small pop-up. So the Sony has a 640K dot EVF. The Canon does not, and this has a 2.33 megapixel EVF. It's not great, but it's substantially better than the Sony version. But again, this weighs, I'm saying, probably almost twice or at least 25% more than the Sony. So it's a little chunky on the chunky side. It's got a flip up screen. Does 4K 30, 4K 24 or 25p. It is 20 megapixels, so it's got some fairly good resolution. It does RAW, unlike the Canon. This does not do RAW, and there's kind of a lot of baked in things that's it's kind of questionable. This gives you the full, I guess, the full scope of being able to edit things in RAW. So what do I think of the camera overall? Kind of shooting these side by side, I would say very similar in performance. So performance-wise, this is much better than the Nikon A1000 as far as the buffer is concerned, and the frame rates per second. So in the Nikon, you get like 7 frames per second, or I think it's 5 to 7 frames per second, but it only lasts like 21 images. This will easily get you in the 30s, 40s, 50s, along with its shooting capability of roughly like 10 frames a second. So it really moves out. It's in comparison with these other smaller cameras and that. But yeah, its image stabilization is very, very good. Much like the Sony version, you have these small cameras. I'm going to put it at, you know, 5 to 8 stops. It just seems easy to handhold this. And so I'll show you some video that I shot handheld at 1440 millimeters, which is a ton in high winds. And you could see, like, you can get out there. My wife was actually surprised. We seen this coyote way over the hill. And I just went for broke and just kind of started hand holding it doing this. And, you know, the image quality, you're going to see heat waves. You're going to see this distortion at this long a distance. But I was actually kind of surprised at, you know, the video and the quality of the focus system, being it's a small sensor that helps out. And yeah, it's quite a bit. When we look at some of the video, if we look at some of the antelope, some of the photography that I've done there, You can see the heat waves. This is 1440 millimeters. Some of this, or if not all of this footage that you see, is pretty much handheld. And that's where the secret kind of sauce comes in for these small cameras. It's almost like cheating. It's so light that you just, it feels ridiculous bringing a tripod with you. If you do bring a tripod with you, it can be a very lightweight unit and you don't necessarily have to struggle getting it set up. But for the anchor point, which I really like over the Canon, it has the EVF there. You can put it to your head and you can really lock it down and try to get the best video possible, along with the image quality. Now, the image quality is, to me, and it's definitely on par if we look at these Prairie Dogs. This is roughly around 720, if not a little bit more, using some of the digital zoom. If we go in close, we can see the eye, we can see a little bit of detail, we can see a little bit of the fur detail. If we back out of the image quality, I should say back out of the image, we notice a little bit of blown out highlights here, and that's kind of a telltale syndrome of these small sensor cameras. Handling the bright light and I should say the contrast images, it does not do the greatest job, but it does a fairly decent job at kind of holding things together. The other thing I noticed, the bigger the lens has a tendency to have a little bit better contrast image and color reproduction. So as I mentioned before, if you've seen any of my P1000 videos or the P950, the bigger the lens, generally speaking, the better the contrast, the better the light and the reflections, and things have a tendency to get washed out. And all these little small cameras, and this is the same for this. I would say the A1000, the Canon, and the Sony all have a little bit of problems with the color and contrast, especially when you have some light coming in. So what you'll want to do is try to shade your lens from directly having light coming in that. But yeah, also notice that if you use f8, which is the maximum aperture of this camera, the image quality has a tendency to go down pretty significantly. So f6.4, believe it or not, that's like as big as it gets at full zoom at 720 millimeters. That has a tendency to produce the best images that I've seen so far. Autofocus is surprisingly good on this camera, meaning even the video, I was tracking animals, kind of doing that, and all I had to do is just touch or move it and it would pick it up quite well. As far as the photography, it was the same thing. All I had to do is kind of punch on it and it would do very well. Very, very different than the Nikon A1000. That autofocus system is really kind of a challenge sometimes. Well, this was night and day, along with the video I thought was really good. So again, we're going to do kind of a matchup between all three or all four of these little point and shoots, because I think the latest camera, this is 2019, I think that's pretty much the last one they've put out for 4 years. So you can take a note, maybe all these camera manufacturers are going to stop producing these at some point and try to push people towards, the bigger stuff. Unfortunately, this with 720 millimeters and the 2 times digital zoom does a really good job for what it is. Overall, I like the camera. I think it's definitely worth a look. There's going to be, probably in the next few years, this stuff is going to get slimmer and slimmer pickings, meaning the Canon and the Sony are left, these three. And once some of the supplies run out, I'm sure that Sony and these guys aren't really going to say much. They're just going to slightly kind of let it sail off into the sunset and not replenish the stocks at some point. But overall, yeah, I think it's definitely a doable camera. You can do some wildlife with it. It's super light in hiking. As I mentioned, I put in 30 miles of hiking with these 2 cameras. And it kind of feels like you're cheating sometimes. When you see wildlife and you get the good light, most of the images I would suggest, if you're going to take this, your settings being ISO 80, 100, 200, 400, if you can get it. Get that ISO down, because you want that detail, and these little sensors, they really kind of start falling apart when you get above ISO 400 and 800. It really kind of, you can notice it. But if you get the ISO down, hold it tight, you can get 1/8 of a second, 1/20th of a second images at full zoom, and it does pretty well. And in fact, a lot of this a lot of this video and everything, again, was just handheld in high winds. As you can see, some of this stuff was done in high winds. That it's kind of miraculous this does as well as it does. There you have it, guys. Good camera, solid. Yeah, I don't know which one I would choose over the three, to be honest, yet. I'm going to start doing that, put another video out for you. But it's definitely worth a look. If you can get your hands on one of these, it's $449. Decent. Comments, questions, hit that below, hit that subscribe, and I'll see you later.